Joining us from Washington, Thomas Warrick, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. We also have David Smith, the Guardian newspaper's Bureau Chief in Washington. Gentlemen, great to see you. Thank you so much indeed for spending time with us. Thomas, let's start with a nice general question. What's more difficult for the president to navigate right now, domestic or international issues?
Well, right now, it's clearly the domestic agenda. He has the expectations of all the people who voted for him that he would focus on lowering prices and costs, on reducing the size of the federal government, while continuing to maintain Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and other important social programs. So there's clearly an enormous amount of attention being focused on domestic issues.
I'd love to know how you would have reacted to an email from Elon Musk when you were at the Department of Homeland Security, Thomas. We'll get on to that when we talk about domestic policies, okay? He has actually, just now, Elon Musk said that he's going to give those employees a second chance. We'll come on to that later. David, why is it that Donald Trump seems to approach so much of his foreign policy about how much money he can make for the United States or how much he can save for the country? You think about tariffs, you think about reconstructing Gaza, you think about the minerals that he wants from Ukraine. Everywhere it's about cash.
Yeah, that's right. Well, we have to remember when he first became president in 2017, he was the first person ever elected to that office without a political or military background. You know, he was a businessman who'd made his reputation and fame on The Apprentice reality TV show where he was running a business, and a lot of voters I talked to in those days said, you know, we want a businessman in the White House. And since then, it's always been transactional, and there's always been that financial element to it. And just remember, for example, last year when he had all those court cases, how he would quickly turn that to financial advantage with merchandise, with his mugshot on it, for example. So no great surprise that I think he looks at someone like Gaza through the prism of how can this be developed with skyscrapers and hotels and money-making exercises. And of course, we're seeing it also with Ukraine, where for him, so much of it is about getting the mineral wealth. And he said today they're close to a deal on that. You know, if you want to understand Donald Trump and his presidency, then dollar signs and the bottom line are always a pretty good place to start.
To both of you, but let's start with you, David. What's happened at the United Nations in the past few hours? The UN General Assembly, so not a binding resolution by any means, voting on a resolution that blames Russia for the invasion of Ukraine, talks about Ukraine's territorial sovereignty, and effectively just criticizes Russia for beginning the war. The Americans didn't like that, so they went to the UN Security Council, a watered-down resolution there, which doesn't blame Russia for the war, and was backed, that resolution, by Moscow. What do you make, David, of the wisdom of this approach of the administration?
In my view, it's very unwise. It's pretty sad and tragic that the United States seems to be taking the side of Russia now in this war. I mean, in this vote where the US was against the resolution condemning Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The US really sided with North Korea and Belarus and other pro-Moscow states, and of course Russia itself, and against Western Europe and its alliances from the past 80 years. And obviously, what happened today was not a one-off. It comes after last week where Donald Trump described Zelensky as a dictator, a word he's never used about Vladimir Putin. As he seemed to be riffing, he even suggested that Ukraine had started this war. It's an epic effort to rewrite history, reminiscent of the way he inverted the January 6th insurrection and claimed that was a heroic defense of democracy. And you know, you have felt the reverberations in European capitals, stunned by Vice President J.D. Vance's speech, where he said the real threat to Europe is from within, not from Russia and China. This is turning American foreign policy on its head, and I suspect Ronald Reagan, the great Cold Warrior who said, you know, tear down this wall, is now spinning in his grave.
Thomas, what do you think? Are we back to Helsinki a few years ago, and President Trump in his first term saying, yep, I believe Vladimir Putin over my intelligence agencies?
Well, it appears that President Trump thinks that flattering Vladimir Putin is a way to get what he wants. And what's a calculated charm offensive is being interpreted very differently in the capitals of Europe with good reason. But this is clearly a tactic. Almost everything Trump uses has some tactical advantage in mind. You can argue about whether it's right or it's wrong, but he has a reason for doing even the crazy things that he does.
Thomas, is he forcing a change in the world order as we've known it since the end of World War II? We've had the favorite to become German Chancellor, who immediately after his election victory spoke very strongly about Europe needing almost to decouple itself from the US.
Well, I can certainly understand that, because many Americans during Trump's first term looked to Chancellor Angela Merkel as a leader in the free world, and that may well now happen again. But what we're seeing is a tactical reset. Trump really does see nationalism as the central point of his governing ideology, and expects everybody else to be as out for themselves as he is for himself and for the United States. But this entire basis on which much of the rest of the world sees the role of the United States as having been a largely benevolent, if somewhat difficult player in most instances, Trump is determined to completely erase that image and go back to the era of big power politics, because he thinks that works for him.
Okay, gents, stay there. Let's listen to another clip. And both of the clips that we're playing you are from that major conservative conference that happened in Washington just a few days ago. So here's the president talking about how he approaches domestic politics and those who are against him.
The fraudsters, liars, cheaters, globalists, and deep state bureaucrats are being sent packing. The illegal alien criminals are being sent home. We're draining the swamp and we're restoring government by the people, for the people. For years, Washington was controlled by a sinister group of radical left Marxists, warmongers, and corrupt special interests who drained our wealth, attacked our liberties, obliterated our borders, and sucked our country dry. Not any longer.
Okay, let's begin with the foreigner's view. David, how, again, regarding the wisdom of the words that he uses, to set up his presidency as a them against us, how can that work for 4 years while keeping American society cohesive, if it ever has been?
I'm not sure it can. I was at that CPAC conference last week, and certainly, yes, Trump was exultant and feeling vindicated. He's won this election. It was a victory lap for him and his supporters. You heard his acolytes saying he's the greatest president ever. Some even suggesting he should change the constitution and run for a third term. And certainly there was a sense that they have, at least for now, vanquished liberal America. And what was striking was a real international dimension to the CPAC conference this time. We had Nigel Farage and Liz Truss from Britain. We had Bolsonaro's son from Brazil.
Giorgia Meloni, the Italian prime minister, she was there, wasn't she?
She gave a speech via video link, and many others too, and really talking about this rise of the global populist right, led by Trump. Truss talks about, we need a Trump revolution in Britain. They really feel emboldened, self-confident that they have the wind at their backs. So at the very moment that Trump is destroying one set of alliances, he, in his mind, is trying to build a new one around nationalist populism and a shift to the far right. And I noticed, Elon Musk with his chainsaw there. There was much talk of him and Doge and a celebration of him. And again, other countries saying that we need an Elon Musk approach right here. And of course, he got that chainsaw from Milei of Argentina.
Yes, absolutely, the chainsaw of bureaucracy. So, Thomas, he's trying to, I don't even know if decimate is the right word, because that means only abolish 1 in 10 elements of whatever you're trying to change. This job that Elon Musk has been given of trying to downsize the federal government sending emails to employees saying that if you don't reply by Monday evening, which is just a few hours away, and explain what you've done during the past week, I'll take that as a resignation letter, now saying that, okay, you may get a second chance. But what way is that to treat employees of the government?
Well, what they're actually trying to do is what Trump wants, not what Elon Musk wants. Musk is the tactic, but the strategic goal for President Trump and his team is to try to bring the bureaucracy to heel. He was very convinced after his first four-year term that the career people who work in the government were not going to go along with his directions. And often that was because he was saying things that were either against the law or didn't comply with government's procedures, which are regulations or laws themselves. And so to Trump, this is all about you need to do what I say and not what you think is best. Trying to change the culture of a 2+ million civil service is going to be difficult. And you know, when Trump and his people use the phrase shock and awe, they don't seem to realize that in Iraq, shock and awe did not work. And so what we're really seeing is an attempt to change the culture. Musk has convinced Trump that, well, the way to do it is the way we do it in Silicon Valley, but the federal government is not Silicon Valley. For one thing, they don't pay workers enough. And so it really does remain to be seen whether this is going to backfire tremendously or not. And that will take several months before the true effects of this effort are going to be understood.
For a country most famously known as a melting pot of ethnicities and cultures and colors and religions, shutting down the DEI programs of the federal government, the diversity, equity, and inclusion, many people will say, and look, I'm clearly not talking about the two of you, that there is a certain age of white man that doesn't understand discrimination because that person has never suffered it. But if you're a minority, if you're a woman, if you're disabled, if you're non-white, wherever you are in the world, actually that's not true. If you live in a majority white country, you probably know what discrimination is about. What's going on with that, Thomas?
Well, there are quite a few people who supported President Trump who believe that they are put upon by the establishment. And Trump has persuaded them that the thing to do is to change the establishment and to go back to the way they would like to think that it was many years ago. Equally, as you say, there are as many Americans who want to point out that that wasn't a golden age, and certainly not for them. But this is going to be a very lengthy and drawn out kind of campaign that is going to go on past even this generation. And so one of the questions is, if what we're seeing from Trump is a backlash to what went on over the last 30 years, what will the backlash to Trump look like? And that's going to be very difficult to say. It's not yet clear whether when the Democrats come back into power, it's always a question of when, not if, will they use some of Trump's same tactics against his supporters? That very much is a concern because instead of returning to a period of relative calm and stability, it's quite possible that the country could careen from right to left to right and stay, off its even keel for a generation.
Thomas Warrick and David Smith, we have run out of time, but actually I have to also congratulate my editor, Sharon, who has given us this time, which is quite unusual in the news bulletin, to have this discussion. It's really, really been worth it. Thanks so much to both of you.
Thank you.